have a silly question for you, Joe. When you call the roll call, are you calling your own name also?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, you just say you're here.
And the chair should always be last.
oh, okay, I had him first. So besides the chair being last, is there any other order?
No, whatever you'd like.
Okay. And even if I know that Jonathan Hayter, for example, is not going to be here, I'm still calling him for the roll call?
So no, so the, at the zoning board, only 5 people will vote. So because all of your 5 full members are here, those will be the only voting members.
Okay, so I'm not roll calling the alternates, okay. Thank
No.
you.
And when we do have an alternate voting, you do need to announce that there's an alternate vote, like when you do the vote.
Okay.
Donna, I'm taking notes as well, just kind of like my notes on how, like, who says what, how do you say it? It's on a OneDrive. I can share it too if that's helpful.
Yeah,
I found it helpful. It's like my shorthand for like, what do you say and when do you say it and what's the order?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is there a time that we have to start by?
No, I mean, you can open the meeting and do the minutes.
Might be worth some time to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:09. Joanna, you were going to say something?
The chair would usually call the meeting to order, and then Donna, you'll do the roll call.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I saw that Joe called it last time. So I'm following his minutes here.
Okay, so we'll,
He called it
Yeah.
because Danny wasn't here.
Okay,
all right, so we're gonna call this, we're gonna call our meeting to order at 7:09. Donna, can you do a roll call for us?
yes. Joseph Carey,
Here,
Zephyr Inkpen,
Here.
James Finnegan,
here,
Donna Carchia is here, Manny Linhares,
Here.
okay. All 5 members are present.
I think we should entertain a motion on the minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th.
second,
There we go.
Was that you, Jim?
Joe seconded them.
Okay.
And I believe we do a roll call for that as well.
Yes. Any
Oh,
discussion?
call for discussion first.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's have any discussion on the minutes as provided. I think the only thing I'm not sure how accurate they need to be, but there's a few spelling errors in my last name, but I'm not sure if that matters because it corrects itself on page 2.
I added the H for today.
Thank you.
I just saw it when you popped up.
Perfect.
And we can fix the old ones before they get posted, so.
Yeah. Yeah, just let me know, because that, obviously Donna and previously Joe would just send them to me, so I can correct those errors before they get posted.
Okay, perfect.
And they're non-substantive, so you don't need to make any motions for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so a roll call for this then?
Yes.
Okay, to approve the minutes, Joseph Casey, Carey,
Aye,
Zephyr Inkpen,
Aye.
James Finnegan,
Aye.
Donna Carchia, aye, and Manny Linares.
Aye. Okay, I think that takes care of some of our big beginning work. I think I see Mr. Brewer here.
Yep, he's on.
Can you hear us,
Yeah, I had
Mr.
to
Brewer?
change computers.
Okay. Could we get you sworn right back, or actually, Joanne, do we reopen the public hearing, or?
So you're just gonna announce, have somebody read the little thing off the agenda? The little paragraph?
Okay,
Okay, I'll read that off the agenda. Continued from February 10th, 2021, public hearing, 15 Plainfield Pike. Plat 19, Lot 9. The applicant and owner, Peter Brewer, seeks the dimensional variance from the Town of Foster zoning ordinances. Article 4 uses, Section 38-192, Dimensional Regulations 1, regarding maximum building coverage of 3%. The applicant proposes to construct a single-family detached dwelling and remove the existing mobile home from the property, which will result in approximately 12% plus or minus of building coverage.
okay. Could we get Mr. Brewer sworn back in, please?
Barbara, you're muted.
I forgot that I was supposed to do it. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay, so I think there's some I guess some items we'd like to put on the record. I have some photos and I think it's 11 buildings that have been dimensionalized on the property provided by Mr. Brewer. Yep, there it is. So I think the question goes to, I think, Joanne, you mentioned that the question goes to, can we mark these as a B in as supplied evidence?
Yes.
And okay, and then before we do that, Mr. Brewer, do you attest that these were provided by you and are an accurate account of the buildings and dwellings on the property?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so these, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 photos and 1 drawing will go as be marked as B, as Exhibit B. Okay, and then with this new evidence, Joanne, my thoughts were that we would move back to recess to have a discussion about the newly
I
supplied.
think you can do it just in this open session.
Okay, okay. So does anyone have any questions or comments on what was provided?
I did want to thank Mr. Brewer for providing this, and I do think in retrospect, after receiving it, it has been helpful for me to really get an idea of overall coverage, what's existing, what's going to be torn down, and to really get a good idea of the percentage needed, which looks like 2.5% more than the existing building. So I do want to thank Mr. Brewer, and I think the rest of the board for recommending it, because I think it was helpful in my decision as well.
Is there any other questions? I have a few after just to recount through, but I'd like to give a chance to everyone first.
Sure, Manny, I'll ask more.
I'm sorry, when the screen is up, I can't see who's talking and I don't know your voices well enough.
Sorry about that. There you go.
So, hi, it's Jim Finnegan. What I guess I'm looking for is a I'm going to try to thread a needle here. So if what I think what we should do is stipulate first that, do we agree here that all of these buildings added in are considered structural, and therefore we're going to go with Mr. Brewer's measurements about the total coverage as is today, with all of these structures being approximately 10.5% of the property, of the substandard property. I think we need to agree that we agree to these measurements, and more importantly, that we can add them in as being covered properties, covered structures on the property. I don't know if I need to make a motion, if I don't know how you want to handle that, but I just want agreement that we're going to say that we're going to go with these numbers, and two, that we agree that that is 10.5%. Because then I have some more comments following that. So I don't know if you want to, how you want to parse the discussion here.
Jim, I have at least two questions on the same thread
Okay.
myself.
Okay.
So I think it's worth a discussion, and I figure if you have any commentary to add, feel free to share it now, and then I'll follow up as well with my notes.
Okay. So I'm going to go with the assumption that these measurements are accurate, and that we have accepted into record these measurements, the total being approximately 2,276 square feet. So right now, anything over 3% requires a variance. We're at 10.5% today, and the applicant is requesting 12%. My concern and my issue is really essentially that my comfort level stands with no intent is to claw back any of that 10.5%. But what I'm saying is, I believe, according to the statements of the applicant, Mr. Brewer, that essentially I'm struggling to get over the hurdle of the economic gain here, that this property is an investment property, and that it's essentially for economic gain. And therefore, instead of trying to claw back and just outright not approve the applicant's request, what I like to do is I would like to make a motion to approve it at 10.5%. Therefore, there's no economic gain in a sense, and we're not clawing back or disadvantaging the applicant by pulling back more of the variance that's already been approved in the past, or what's structurally there today.
Jim, could we potentially not put a motion in yet and continue the discussion?
Yeah, that was a hypothetical of, I didn't know how you wanted to handle it as chair.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's perfect. So I have two questions that are regarding that as well, Jim, and the rest of the board. So just one. I guess the first question to you, Mr. Brewer, is again just trying to provide and understand all of the dimensions and calculations. When I look at building number 6, it says 198 square feet specifically, and the dimensions provided on the print say 17 feet by 11 feet. When I do that calculation, it's approximately 11 square feet shorter. I know it's negligible in the grand scheme of things, but it appears that through the 11 by 17, it's actually 187 square feet, which is a reduction of 11 square feet. Can you clarify that point before I move to my second question?
So, yeah, I think I know what the difference is. When I measured them and did the calculations, all of those were like 11'3" or 11'4". So I was like 11 foot and a quarter. And then when I did the map, I did everything and dropped the extra inches on each dimension. And I think that's what happened. Because I know almost every building, because I the outside, you know what I mean? And
Okay, I mean, it's
like
still
either 0.33 feet or 0.25 feet. And then when I did the drawing, I put on the drawing, I left the inches in each.
the reason why I ask is they're all exactly accurate except for that one.
Maybe that one I just missed rounding it up then. I know.
Okay,
If you hold on a second, it might be in my book where I wrote down.
okay.
And I don't have the pictures that I gave you guys because I gave you guys all my pictures.
If needed, Mr. Brewer, I think we could pull them up and we'll just have to take turns announcing ourselves for a stenographer.
Yeah, let me know if you want to put something up because I don't want to, I want to give Barbara a chance to catch up and not miss somebody, so.
All right, that building actually measured at 17 foot. Oh, you guys can't see it. Oh, yeah. Well, you can't. Those are my measures. Was actually 17'9" by 11'2".
I'm sorry, but you're breaking up. I can't, I don't know if it's because you're moving around. Those were
No,
my
it's 'cause it
measurements.
changed from
Actually,
Cox to Verizon.
all right, I didn't hear those measurements.
Well, that building actually physically measured 11'9" by 17'9" by 11'2". I guess I didn't round that off when I did the other paperwork, so. Let me get my calculator.
So if my math is correct, oh, and it's not. Let's see.
Let's see. 17.
So if that math is correct, that should be 162.7 square feet. Again, I think, Mr. Brewer, for the small minute piece, it was really just really odd that it was the only one that was off. I think a plus or minus 11 square foot in this discussion is probably within reason.
If you do your math, 17'9" by 11'2", it comes out to 198. I just did it twice. So, but like I said, I meant to use the measurements on the
I'm
paper.
sorry, he's not coming out clearly. It's every other word.
So 17'9", which is 17 3/4, 17.75. 11'2" times 11'2" comes out to 198 square feet. Like I said, I changed it all. When I put it on the paper, I just deleted the inches. And that's why you see that difference on that building.
Okay.
I don't know, if when you said your math was coming out at 168 or something?
No, it was because I was looking at one of the other buildings and using it off of here. It's 11.1666 repeating times 17.75, and it does come out to 198. It's just that's not the information I have in front of me. Next question is it was really regarding on here. I think it's structure 10 and structure 11 appear to both be decks. There's sort of two reasons why I bring that up. The first one is in trying to do a little bit of homework just to make sure that we would have a good discussion here. According to Rhode Island General Laws, I believe it's 45-31. It describes a building a little differently than a structure. And again, I can read them. I think number 10 building is any structure used or intended for supporting or sheltering any use or occupancy versus a structure, which is 63 structure, a combination of materials to form a construction for use, occupancy, or ornamentation, whether installed on, above, or below the surface of land or water. There's two reasons to that. Is I I don't know if Michael has a recommendation from our building official with what he thinks, but it doesn't appear that decks would traditionally count against the building coverage as I understand it. Michael, do you have any position from our building official?
Yeah, so, and I didn't get anything in writing from Jeff Likens, the building official, but I did have a conversation with him shortly after our meeting last time, and obviously presented the issue to him. He's in agreement, Manny, with you that a deck does not constitute a building. And when you're talking about the issue here is that we don't have a local definition of building coverage, right? The building coverage is not defined in our local ordinance, unfortunately. But going from, like, as you just stated, the Rhode Island General Law's definition for structure versus a building, it stands to reason that you could apply here that a deck, we could probably omit that from building coverage as it goes with the application here.
I'd like to comment on that.
I think I have one more point before Mr. Brewer is the reason why I bring it up is there's a general feeling that whether you occupy the property or anyone else does, there's probably use or leverage to add deck or deck-like structures to the property, and according to them not being restrictive, you or any future owner of the property could add them per proper permitting. So it's only fair to omit them on one side or the other of the calculation in at least my thinking. Feel free to comment.
I'd like to comment. And part of my application is the tax card. The tax card includes that as building square footage, and I pay the taxes on it. They clearly include it, and they got in their drawing, and I pay taxes on it. They include it as building area. Why I added it, and I do pay taxes on it.
I'm just bringing it up because I think that it could become a stipulation that if we counted it in, it would be restrictive as could become a building envelope restriction going forward, and there wouldn't be a potential to add a deck for you or future tenants.
Do we lose Manny?
Oh no, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was any other comments or questions from the body. I was just bringing that up just to be careful to Jim's original point as we start considering this. It doesn't change it. It doesn't change it much. It does reduce by 1%, but the reason when I saw it at 1%, it was enough for me to bring it up as a point to the whole body here. Because if 1% was for decks, that would be quite restrictive for future tenants or for future use if you couldn't add decks in the future on this property. I have no further questions.
Mr. Chair.
Well, I mean, my only comment there is if anyone had a property built in this one, and the simple question is, if there's no deck on this property when it's built, and then an owner wants to add a deck, are they coming back for another variance or they're not? If they're not, then deck shouldn't be included, right?
Michael, do you have some thoughts there?
Sorry, is the question that if somebody wants to add a deck further, that it would trigger a variance? I know Joe's waving us. I know Joe has some questions. Do we want to get to Joe's questions before we get to that, or
why don't we iron out?
How do we want to proceed?
Why don't we iron out this question first,
Okay.
and we'll give Joe the floor.
All right, I just wanted to recognize him because I know he's been waving at the screen. So I'm sorry, the question was, if somebody wants to add a deck in the future, would it trigger the need
That's right.
for a
Any
variance?
property owner in Foster that wants to add a deck does that trigger, if the deck is large enough, does it trigger a variance because it's considered a building? It's a real simple question, really.
I mean, for this, in this instance, in this instance, I don't think so, based on our discussion so far, but Joanna's waving me off.
Oh,
What's up,
I
Joanna?
think the issue in this instance is that it is likely that any deck that would be added is probably going to need a side yard or it's gonna need a variance for
Right.
property lines, just the way that the lot is and the way it's situated.
Yes, agreed.
And I was commenting specifically about building
Right.
coverage, but yeah,
Yeah,
thank you,
we're
Joanna, for
talking
the
dimensional. I'm
clarification.
not talking that, yeah, I understand the offset, I know the offset and all, but on the dimensional, it's a good question, but the question is, any resident that is adding a deck, is that counted towards their building coverage? Yes or no? What if they were to build a deck without getting into, property line offsets? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
either.
no.
But I think in this particular instance, it is likely that he'll need a dimensional just based on the structure of the property.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I see the intent from Jim's question, though. Jim's sort of question is because it wouldn't trigger one could be added, but we're going to count it here as building coverage, and it potentially wouldn't with regard to a request of the town. Okay, sorry about that. Joe, you have a question. I can't see you waving either. You're very dark on the screen. Feel free to use the raise your hand button, and I'll be sure to notice you. The floor is yours.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Not well, not terribly well.
Joanna, you heard me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. I know some people couldn't hear other people that I could hear just fine, so I guess everybody's computers are different. I did look at Mr. Brewer's drawings and his percentages, and the old buildings came up to about 10.4%. It was 2,276 square feet. I know we're picking around a couple feet here and there. The lot size is 21,780, I believe. He proposes, if you look at the drawing of the house, I know he's asking for 12%, but the house and garage is 2,490 square feet, which is 11.4% of the lot. And that's only a 1% increase from what's existing, plus or minus the decks. I also did some research looked into properties in the area where Mr. Brewer's house is. I only found 4 properties that were less than a half an acre. Of them 4 properties, one had a 0.13 acre lot, had a 22% building coverage on that lot. There was another lot, there was 0.32 acres that had 16.65 acres, 6.65% building coverage. And the third property besides Mr. Brewer's that was under that had, I believe it was the third property was 7.1%. So including Mr. Brewer's as the 4th property at 10.4, that works out to 56.5 divided by 4. That's a 14.1% average of the 4 properties in the same neighborhood that have less than a half an acre. I also went and looked at 10 properties under an acre, including the smaller lots, and the average of all the substandard lots under 1 acre, an example of 10 of them is about 8.36% average. So it establishes that it is very standard or common that the substandard lots of the record are well over the 3% allowed coverage.
So-
And I really don't see anything in ordinances. What? Excuse me?
Yeah, the last one that you said had 7.1% coverage. How big was that lot?
Oh, that was 0.48.
Thank you. Sorry, just for the
Sorry.
record.
Yeah, I didn't, I know I had trouble finding it on my paper, that's why. But anyway, so it's standard. I mean, and I can go on and there's lots throughout the town, but I just used that Plat area so it was in the Clayville area. All these properties that I used the numbers from are in Mr. Brewer's neighborhood. Now, this is all over town. There's a 4-family house on 0.7 acres on Route 101, right on the road. There's like a little 4-apartment house on 0.75 acres that was built in 1983, which is well over the 12%. And I mean, it isn't, I know I'm really familiar with substandard lots of records because where I live, all the homes are substandard. My house in particular is 14% building coverage on a 0.12 acre lot. I have a small home, but because my lot is so small, my building coverage is extreme. So I think, I think we lose something, with these substandard lots. I think this building percentage thing has never come up as far as I can recollect in the last 20 years that I've been involved with zoning and planning. And it was something new to me. And I didn't notice it in the beginning when I was looking at the application of the requirements. But, I think that with a substandard lot, there should be a little bit of leeway, especially when he is improving the lot, putting a home on there. But that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Joe. That was really good. Again, I think there's a when looking at the standards worksheet, it doesn't necessarily address how to look at and weigh in appropriately to what others have because of the 5 pieces of criteria. So I still think that weighs in substantially to our thinking and decision. Does anyone else from the board have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing none.
I just wanted to say thank you to Joe because you obviously did a lot of research. And I think shed some light on that for me. I'm sure other people were impressed too by the number of different lots you looked into. Because we don't have too many substandard lots with the 5 acre minimum now, but it wasn't always the case. So thank you for shedding light on that, Joe.
Yeah, I found it really helpful too. I think it's also good to hear your knowledge of what's been going on in the past 20 years to really get the idea of the spirit of the law as well, and what that there's definitely, I agree, Manny, with what you're saying, that we have the form and we should speak to the form to the best of our ability. But I think it's also good to take in consideration the words from Joe on, the laws are made and the regulations are made to define guidelines that we should follow for the feeling of living in foster. And I know that there are legal ramifications and that there are very strict, like, here's exactly how to define a building versus structure. But it's also good to consider the history of foster and the spirit behind those words as well. So I do appreciate that, Joe. I think having your experience in it and the detailing that you did to that and how you tied it in was very helpful. So thank you.
I think that
I'm gonna disagree somewhat there with the spirit of this. The spirit of this, and I'm not even bringing the fact that whether it's a substandard lot or not. I'm focused on the variance itself and the 3%, which applies to substandard or regular size lots. The spirit of this, or what historically has happened with substandard lots, and yes, a lot of them are over the 3% because they're substandard and there was a grandfather clause in here. I'm struggling with getting above and over the hurdle regarding economic gain here. my position on this is the spirit of this in Foster is not to buy up substandard lots and then come in to build a larger house and get a variance to build a larger house. The bottom line is this property already has its variance. And if we go further and expand on this variance and provide more, it really does counter the economic gain here. Because I do believe that this property is not a primary residence. It's being used as an investment. And therefore, I don't get over the hurdle of the provisions of approving this because of the economic gain. It's solely for economic gain.
Actually, that's a good point. Peter, when you were talking before about the property, I think originally you mentioned that it was going to be your retirement home. And I think one of the things that really seems to be a sticking point is the purpose of the building.
Still my plan, but plans can change at any given point in life.
We also can't stipulate that Mr. Brewer lived there as his primary residence. We can't make that a condition of approval. But I understand the question, but I just wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah, my intent's not to make a stipulation. My intent is going on the statements of the applicant.
Yeah,
which
I just want to make sure.
Essentially is that, and as we know, it is not a primary residence. And I believe the spirit of any variance is not to come in. Today it's Mr. Brewer. Tomorrow it could be Toll Brothers. You can buy up all you want in property lots and say, oh, give me a variance. And I want to build a McMansion or whatever. I mean, the point is, I don't want to claw back anything with regard to what the current building coverage is. I don't think that's fair. But I don't think the economic gain here, and it struck me, the discussion about a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage, is there is ample opportunity to build a proper size house here within 10.5% or even within the 3%. I'm not sure, but I believe a bridge too far here is coming in and allowing for economic gain, a bigger house with double garages. It's because I believe it's a spec house. And I don't believe that's the spirit of what we're doing here. That's my opinion. That's why I'm asking to thread the needle here. And if we agree on the measurements or what is truly building coverage, agree on that. And I would make a motion to say that the approval would not be at 12%. It would be at the agreed to percentile based on this diagram. With the condition also, I would ask as a motion that all structure need to be removed entirely from this property. So we start de novo, brand new, with whatever that building, whatever that lot size or building size we're approving here. That's
Jim,
where I'm going with this.
Jim, would you like to formally make that a motion now?
Yes.
Can I get a clarification from the solicitor, please?
Yes.
Now, is it irrelevant whether Mr. Brewer is going to live in the home or if he's going to sell the home? I don't think that's relevant to the variance in any way. And also, I think I was wondering if the current building coverage is really relevant to the variance. I think the variance should stand on its own merit. I just was wondering, but is that relevant that whether he lives there or he rents it or sells it?
So his intent to live on the property is not relevant to the board's decision. As far as the current building coverage, I think that the board can, well, so I do want to make a correction. I know that Mr. Finnegan said the current variance. So he does not have a current variance for lot coverage. The
Right,
lot,
thank
what is on there is because it's grandfathered. So he never had to get a variance to put those things on there. So this is not like we're undoing. So he's never had that type of a variance. As far as the relevance of the buildings that are on there now, I don't think that the board is bound by the coverage that's there right now, nor does it require that the board, so they're not bound by it. You don't have to do more. I think it's something to consider. And I do know that it helps the board to understand what's on there right now. but it's not binding. You do not have to necessarily, that doesn't mean you have to give him 10.5%. You can consider it, but it's not, it's not binding on the board, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Jim, you were about to make a motion.
Yeah, and I'm glad, Joanna, you did it. I'm trying to be careful, and I hate to overuse it, thread a needle here, because I'm afraid what we don't want is just a binary up or down vote on knowing the 12%, because there really is no coverage now. We are looking at it. Doesn't matter what's there. Technically, we can ignore that, but I don't believe that's fair. So what I'm trying to do is not go, God forbid, binary, and then we're stuck with yes or no, because I'll be dead honest with you. Based on my own opinion, this is for economic gain in the sense of what I understand from the statement. So therefore, what I'm trying not to do, though, is claw back based on the grandfather, the coverage he has today. I'd rather preserve that for him without going and giving more, because I'm concerned we're not meeting the intent and spirit of our standards. That's why I want to make the motion to thread the needle here without having just an up or down vote, because I'm afraid that this applicant may lose. So I want to be very careful here.
I think Zephyr might have a question.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we could go back to a point. I think, Joanna, you said something very interesting, and that is it is not, should not be taken in consideration whether or not this is a primary residence, right?
Correct.
So I think, Jim, we should be very careful of considering whether or not this is, a flip house or a flip property. If we can't take into consideration whether this is residence or not, then maybe we should redefine how we define financial gain. Or we can at least establish what is financial gain. How do we determine it? If we can't use the basis of, is this his primary residence, or is he using it to build a house on and sell? If we can't use that as a basis for financial gain, what is the basis for determining what's financial gain?
Zephyr, just again, I'm not exactly sure what, because I didn't say it, but trying to understand the thread reference of Jim is that I think all of us agree that whether Mr. Brewer lives in this place or not, he deserves to do something with this property better than what it is. Number two, I think that we would all love to see an improvement here on this property from what it is. So I think what he's trying to say is being very cautious that we don't make a motion where it will become a yes or no because of the way it votes, versus something that we all could agree on and move forward so that the property gets an improvement going forward. It's very, I think he's trying to thread a very interesting needle that makes a lot of sense. But I also don't want to put words in his mouth.
But I want to clarify that the standard is greater financial gain, not just financial gain. And so when we're talking about it, it is to realize a greater financial gain.
Yeah, and that's right. I have section, I did some research, and I have section 168, and just just bear with me. A variance may not be granted if the hardship claimed results primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain. Okay. I'm struggling with that. So I'm trying to be careful. I'm going with the standards. And when I look at the 5 standards and 2 of them I'm concerned about, I don't want to claw back and take away and say no to the entire 12% requested. But I don't believe, based on the conditions of the standards, I can go for the full 12%. I rather try to have an accommodation where we're doing everything in everyone's best interest.
Can I ask you?
A suggestion, please?
Joe has his hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Manny, may I speak?
Yeah, please, the floor is yours. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand where Jim wants to make a motion. I think in the interest of doing it properly, we should make a motion on the main motion, the draft motion, and he can make during discussion, he can amend the motion, and if he wants to add language, and we can vote on the amendment, if everybody agrees on the reduction in the 12%, and it might be a better way to go about it.
Joe, I think what might even be easier is if we can poll the board. So rather than actually making the motion and then we're kind of amending and kind of making a very messy record, Jim could kind of throw out what his idea is to add a special condition or amend. And then the board, he can poll the board to see if it's going to pass or not. If Jim's amenable to that, it just makes for a cleaner record, and maybe the board in that sense can also kind of discuss if somebody's like, well, I like this, but I don't like that. And maybe, maybe you could come up with an amendment together by polling the board. If that's, Manny, do you think that?
Well, that's acceptable, but
I
I don't
think-
think we can motion now.
I'm
Okay, I
sorry,
think-
wait a minute. I'm hearing feedback all of a sudden. I don't know where that,
Might be, Bob was moving around. He's here now. See him? Hey,
or
Bob.
maybe leave, if you're not speaking, please stay on mute because I was getting feedback.
Thanks, Barbara. So Joe, thank you very much for that. Donna, before we move to I think a fine suggestion from Joanne, did you have a question? I think you were raising your hand as well.
Well, I was actually going to ask Jim a very specific question, but I think because Joanna intervened, she kind of summarized what I was going to ask Jim about.
Okay, so Jim, I think it's fine if you want to attempt to get a.
So, okay, great. So let's do it that way. I think that's a great idea. So what I'm going to do is let's start with, we need to start with the building dimensions here. That I think we first have to agree that we have a record, we have this diagram with its measurements. And I'm making a motion to submit this as accurate with these dimensions.
You're making a motion or you want to poll the board?
Well, okay. I think I should poll the board because, Manny, you brought up a good point. The bottom line is we are at 10.5% with coverage that includes decks. So the first question is, should the board, I'm polling the board to ask, do we agree that 10.5% is good as is with the decks included, or take them out? That's the first question, because that's going to lower the coverage.
Does anyone on the board want to share their thoughts? Why don't we just, can we go around robin, and maybe Donna, you can just, for the poll, just call us in order?
Okay, Joe?
I accept the 10.5%, yes, with the text.
I'm sorry, Joe, you broke up.
I accept it as presented from Mr. Brewer.
Okay. Zephyr?
Yeah, I'll accept the measurement with the decks as well.
Jim?
Yeah, I would say remove the decks.
Who am I missing?
Yourself.
And then Manny too. Okay, and I would say with the decks, because Foster doesn't specify, so we had to go back to the general laws. So maybe we can think, if you want to remove them, maybe we can add that at some future point. But because we don't have that in our town laws at this point, I would say with the decks. And Manny?
I do not believe, from referencing the Rhode Island general laws, which is all we have, as well as our building official comment to Michael, that the decks actually count. But to be clear, I think that in this case, the 1%, one way or another, is fine. Meaning without the decks, it's 9.5% and 10.5%. I don't think the decks actually fit in the calculation, but I want to be clear that the 1% to me is close enough to find that middle ground.
Okay, so yeah, so then we're polling only. So then
So
I'm
with
okay
the
with that.
decks,
de minimis. I'm okay with, again, that concept. Yeah, okay. We're just coming up with a number, so I like that. I'm okay with that.
Okay, 1 second, Jim. I think you were going to poll us again. Zephyr, I think I saw your hand up. I'm trying to watch the videos. It's not easy.
I was going to bring up a point. We're good.
Okay, so Jim, were you gonna try to pull us on a second question?
So now that we've spoken about it, what ultimately I'm gonna do is, after we poll, we probably should then do an actual motion and a vote on accepting in a percentage, the number here, right? That's the next step. So we're at 10.5%. So I'm making a motion that we accept.
Wait, so here's it. If we need to make the main motion and then we would amend. So if you want to poll the board right now so that you can get an idea of whether or not this motion would be seconded or passed, we can do this like easier through discussion, and then we'll make the main motion and then an amendment if it needs to be made, or actually we can just add it on to the main motion before.
I see what you're saying. The main motion is the actual application of 12%. I understand what you're saying. Okay. So we don't have to do it in reverse for building up. We don't have to accept this in first. Gotcha. Okay.
Just one clarification point, Joanne. Are you saying we have to use the recommended written motion that we've sort of been provided, or can we just go directly to something that we've all sort of worked out per the polling?
So we can, but that draft motion technically needs to be read, but you can, you can amend like square footage or whatever, but it still needs to be in that long form where you're stating the laws and things like that. It can't just be, I want to approve X%. Do you know what I mean?
Perfect. So Jim, I'm gonna, I think what Joanne's saying is after your polling, you could use the language in the motion and change intricate pieces of it if necessary. You don't have to read it exactly as is. You could replace a number here or there after your polling results.
Or you could read it as is and then move to amend it, whatever the board's pleasure. I can help if you're going to modify it as we go. So
crystal clear. Thank you.
All right. So the actual zoning, in the minutes, we have an actual motion about the 12%. You're saying that's the main motion.
Correct.
Okay. And we're going to poll to say, I'm going to do a poll right now. I'm saying the goal of the poll is to say, my motion would be to read the motion, what's on the applicant here, the motion, and not go with 12%, but with 10.5%.
So so you'd like to amend it to.
And I'd like to amend it. So my goal, the poll, is to see if we have an agreement to amend this.
Yep.
Down from 12% to 10.5%. So Donna, that's the poll before we
Okay,
make.
so we're not reading the main motion and then amending it. Okay.
Not yet.
We're gonna just do the poll for now.
Okay, so Joe,
No,
Zephyr,
Yeah, I'd be fine with accepting it at the 12%, not reducing it down to 10.
So no, not reduce.
so no.
No.
Donna, yes. Jim,
Yes.
Manny,
I think it's clear to not claw back anything and use the 10.5% as presented.
So you vote yes.
Yes.
Okay. Does the applicant, Mr. Brewer, do you have anything to say about this? Did you want to comment about this?
No, I got no comment to make. I'm asking the board to approve 2,522 square feet at 10% lot coverage. That's what my application is for. That's what I asked for.
10% lot coverage?
12%.
12%.
2,522 square foot house with garage equaling 12% lot coverage. That's what my request to the zoning board is.
so does the amendment pass then, Joanna?
We were just polling, so
Yep.
it would, obviously, if it was made with the main motion, it would pass. But although the amendment would pass, the motion would fail based on if everybody voted consistent with their votes on the amendment. So you need 4-0 to approve, and you don't have that if everybody votes consistent with their position on the amendment.
I just one clarification point, or at least thoughts to Jim. Jim, you may want to run through the exact same poll using the 12%, because I think that there's a misinterpretation of when we say yes or no.
I agree.
Right? You understand what I'm saying? Like there.
That actually makes sense. So let's just do a poll of approving this application for 12% on its face. And Donna, why don't we poll that?
Okay. Joe,
I just had one question before I
Let's,
answer.
I
Joe,
can
let's-
hear you.
What is an amendment only need, if we amend a motion, you hear me?
Yeah, an amendment only needs a simple majority, but to
Okay.
actually pass, you need the
All right.
full, you need the super
All right,
majority.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so, okay. All right, so I would say yes to the 12%.
Zephyr,
I would say yes to the 12%.
so just to clarify, Joanna, the last poll that we did is asking, would you approve the 10.5%? Is that
Yes.
correct? And now just, would you approve the 12%?
Yes,
Right.
Correct.
Okay, okay, then I'm going to say yes.
okay?
Jim
No.
and Manny.
I think there's a discrepancy with standard worksheet number 2 and number 4. So my answer would be no.
So the motion would fail.
And again, just so that the body understands it, and again, Joanne, correct me if I start suggesting something differently. If we presented it at 12 and we all voted as we did, it wouldn't pass.
Correct.
If we all voted as the 10%, it wouldn't pass.
Correct.
But during a vote of the 10% or 12%, if one of us felt that we would vote yes, that voted no the other way, it would pass.
Correct.
So I think that either motion would be perfectly fine to be asked. Just truly understand that in either case, the no, Mr. Brewer walks away without an acceptance from this board. And you know, if we vote either way, 3-2 in either direction, it ends up not passing. And I don't know that that's the intent of any of us from what we've said.
Right. And I mean, at this point, I think it might be helpful, Mr. Brewer, well, I don't know where he went. But sometimes when we've had instances like this where a board is trying to modify an application or impose some special conditions, an applicant will typically kind of put their 2 cents in or try to negotiate or see if we could work something out that's a happy medium for the board and the applicant. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Brewer, if you have any comments,
No. Nope, beat this thing to death for a year. 2 years, actually.
Okay, but I mean, I'm trying to make this to work with you so that you come out with a decision that you can live with and that you're happy with and that doesn't cause you more time or money or energy.
Happy with 12% lot coverage.
Okay, we polled the board and it doesn't look like that will pass. And it also doesn't look like 10-5 will pass. So do you have?
I do want to preface, if I know we took a poll earlier, and the poll I believe was more on what is our preference, 10
Mhm.
or 12. If if the only way this would pass would be at the 10, then I would vote yes, just to ensure that it passed. My preference would be for 12%, but I would still vote for 10% just to make sure that this lot could be used and Mr. Brewer could build on it. So mine wasn't an unequivocal, no, I'll never vote on any of this. I want to keep it at 3%. It was, I'm okay with the 12%, but if the only way it passes is 10, then I would vote yes.
Yeah, Zephyr, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Is I think it was unclear how the question or poll was phrased. So thank you for that. I think that's helpful.
I mean, the thing is that this is still appealable because it is not the relief he'd requested, so he could technically still appeal it. So I mean, I think I'm just trying to see if there's something that would appease Mr. Brewer that would also appease the board and save him the time and expense of an appeal. If he does not want to comment or try to discuss it more with the board, that's his right. You know, I'm just trying to.
Okay, so
Mr. Chair,
I would like to.
I'd like to speak to this also. As Zephyr did, I agree with Zephyr. I would vote for the 10.5. I wouldn't deny him based on that because of the reduction. I would prefer the 12. So that's why I said no to the 10.5. But if Mr. Brewer is in agreement with that, I don't know if it's to his benefit if I did vote for that, because if he wants 12%, I shouldn't, you know, that's what he needs. He's going to appeal. If he appeals, he needs 3 votes to 3-2 vote in an appeal. So
No, an appeal is to
it's to
Superior
his
Court.
benefit to appeal.
An appeal is to the Superior Court.
Right.
It is not, an appeal is not to another board, it's to Superior Court, and then a judge decides.
Okay,
Well, they back to the board sometimes to vote on.
No, that's the planning board would go to you, but your board, there's nobody else who reviews you, so it would go straight to Superior Court.
Okay, Joanne, is it okay to sort of entertain a motion from?
You've already made a motion. I just checked the minutes from the last time. We made the motion, so that motion is still kind of pending. Somebody would make an amendment to the motion.
I withdrew the motion at the last meeting.
It doesn't say that in the minutes. Did you withdraw? You did though? Okay. So
Yes,
then, yeah.
I did. We both withdrew, yes.
Okay.
So the motion on the table then is the motion that Mike sent out for the 12%.
Yes, somebody will need to read it and can make the amendment as far as the lot coverage. Although I think the motion should be read the way that it is and then make an amendment to reduce the lot coverage and to add the special condition of removing all the buildings.
Okay, would you like me to read this, Manny?
Please?
If you'd like to make a motion, that would be fine.
Am I making a motion or am I reading the motion that's already on the table?
If we need a motion, we don't need you to read it, as I understand it right now. Is that correct, Joanne?
No, so apparently Joe, although the minutes don't say it, Joe said the motion was withdrawn last time. So Donna needs to make that motion again, but just read it from the draft motion sheet. Then somebody will second it, and then Jim can make his amendment. And Jim, I would ask you to make the amendment with both conditions, with the special condition and the reduction in the lot coverage. And then we can vote on that, and then we'll vote back on the main motion.
Okay.
Okay, the draft motion from the last meeting. I make a motion to approve the application under the authority granted to the Zoning Board of Review by Rhode Island General Law 45-24-57 and by the Town of Foster Zoning Ordinance, Article 2, Section 38.63. Specifically, the following relief is granted in accordance with the zoning in the application. 9% of relief from the required maximum building coverage in an AR zone of 3% in the Town of Foster zoning ordinances, Article 4, Section 38-192.1, dimensional regulations. Do I need to read the rest?
Yeah.
Okay. Evidence of the following standards pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 45-24-41 and the Town of Foster zoning ordinance, Article 7, Section 38-324 has been entered into the record of proceedings. The hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant. The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain. The granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. The relief to be granted is the least relief necessary. And in granting a dimensional variance, the hardship that will be suffered by the owner of the subject property if the dimensional variance is not granted shall amount to no more than a mere inconvenience, which shall mean that there is no other reasonable alternative to enjoy a legally permitted beneficial use of one's property. The fact that a use may be more profitable or that a structure may be more valuable after the relief is granted shall not be grounds for relief. Optional conditions. Further, it is proposed that the following special conditions based on the competent, credible evidence on the record and allowed under Rhode Island General Law 452443 in the Forster Zoning Ordinance, Article 7, Section 3, be applied to the decision in order to promote the intent and purposes of the comprehensive community plan of the town and the zoning ordinance. Proposed conditions.
So I think one of the conditions would be that the structures be removed, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, all structures will be removed. I think, Donna?
So all structures be removed.
And all existing structures from the property be removed. Okay, do we have a second?
You said yes.
Second.
Who was that?
Didn't hear that.
I
That
was Joe.
second.
Joe Carey seconded.
Discussion?
Well, I'd like to do an amendment to the motion. I propose an
Yep.
amendment. I propose the amendment on two purposes. I believe the 12% is not the least relief necessary. And also it is realizing greater financial gain at 12%. Therefore, I make a motion to propose an amendment to 10.5%, which would preserve the current coverage of the lot without this board clawing back any of that 10.5%. That's my amendment.
Because
10.5 lot coverage, which would be a 7.5 variance. Because the regular motion, he's requesting 9% relief. So you're going to approve 7.5% relief.
Right.
If that, just to stay consistent.
Okay.
Sorry.
So my motion, again, is to do an amendment to the to this application
Motion.
from 12% to 10.5%, which would be a variance of 7.5%. And the reason for that proposal is based on my concern of greater financial gain to go over 10.5% or 7.5% variance, as well as the least relief necessary is preserving the current 7.5% variance that's on this grandfathered in substandard lot.
Joanne, do we ask Donna and Joe, who made the motion and seconded the motion, if they would be amenable to the change, or?
No, just need a second on the amendment and then you can poll the board on that.
Do we have a second on the amendment that Jim just offered?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Donna.
Any discussion?
Any further discussion? Okay, Donna, could you do a roll call to vote on the motion
On
that
the
was amended? The amended motion.
The amendment?
So we are just voting on the amendment, and then we will go back and vote on the main motion. So on the amendment, just a yay or nay is acceptable. On the main motion, you do need to give your reasons as to why you are voting a specific way. And if in fact we are going to be, this amendment passes, if you could include in your vote on the main motion why you believe the 10.5 is necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Joanne, for the correction. Donna, I guess we don't need to do that. Just a yay or nay on the amendment to the motion.
Okay, Joe,
No.
Zephyr,
So we're voting for the amendment to be down to the,
10.5.
yeah.
To approve the amendment at 10.5 to 7.5.
Yes.
Donna, yes. Jim,
Yes.
Manny,
Yay.
Now we can vote on the main motion as amended. Unless there's any more discussion.
Okay, let's do a roll call on the motion, which is now amended.
okay. So essentially, just to be clear, we are voting on the same exact thing all over again. We're just
With-
calling it.
On the main and the amended combined, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Joe,
Aye.
Zephyr,
Aye.
Donna, Jim,
Aye.
Manny,
Aye. One clarification, Joanne, should we be hitting our 5 peak points of the standard worksheet right now, or do we follow up with that?
I do think that everybody's given enough of their opinion. Do you have has everybody completed their standard worksheets?
not yet.
No, Donna, my answer is, I approve. Specifically, I think that this is now, the 10.5 is the least relief necessary. And I also think that it meets the standard worksheet number 2, where at the 10.5, which is where their property is currently, there is no greater financial gain with that decision, and the property and Mr. Brewer has a use for it and to do something with it.
Okay. Joe,
I think Donna, we already did all 5 members. Is that correct?
yes, but I thought that we were going to go around and give a reason why. Isn't that what Joanna wanted?
Yes, please.
And you just gave yours, Manny, so I'm just going to call on Joe now.
Okay.
All right. While I did vote in favor of this amendment, I want to state that I would have voted for the 12%, and I think that's also appropriate. The use is allowed in the zoning ordinance under section 38-228. The use existed prior to July 7th of 1967. It is an established substandard lot of record since 1922. And the proposed use and variance do not conflict with any noted land use or housing goals within the comprehensive plan. It will improve the parcel by replacing existing non-conforming use, a mobile home, with a conforming use, a single-family home, and is consistent with the surrounding area.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Zephyr,
I also want to second what Joe said. I am approving it with the amendment, but would have approved it with the original ask. I believe the hardship does seem due to the unique characteristic of the size of the existing mobile home being no longer made, and mobile homes in general no longer being conforming with current zoning ordinances. I think in considering that in 1981, the zoning board approved a 10 by 12 foot addition to the existing mobile home and the footprint of the existing house is grandfathered in. It's already above the current percent and the relief desired, slightly less than 3% originally and now equal to what's already there. Does not seem driven by financial gain. Replacing the mobile home with a single family detached dwelling will bring the lot closer in conformity with zoning ordinance to remove the non-conforming use.
Thank you, Zephyr. And I voted aye for the same reasons, and I would have voted for the 12%, but I preferred the 10.5. And I preferred the 10.5% because we're looking at the least relief necessary. And I think if we disregard, as Joanna suggested that we do, we really can't consider whether or not Mr. Brewer is desires this percentage for economic gain necessarily. But I do think that I would prefer the 10.5 because it's the least relief necessary. Jim?
I would have not approved the 12%, and hence why I made the amendment request. I believe the least relief necessary is a variance that is at 10.5%, which is giving the applicant 7.5% above the 3%. We have preserved what his current coverage is. And again, that's given the least relief necessary. I do believe, should we have granted more at the 12% request, we would have not been in conformance with the standard that would have triggered a greater financial gain. And hence why I would have denied the 12% and why I did provide for the amendment, which was passed.
Donna, I would like to just correct or complete one of my statements as well, if I could have the time.
Yeah.
So specifically with the standard worksheet number 4, I would like to add to what I mentioned that the original proposal of 12% doesn't appear to be the least relief required, and 2 main points help me get to that conclusion. Above the current 10.5 of what's used does appear to be could potentially become financial gain, regardless of what Mr. Brewer intends for the property, which is not even factored into the decision that I've made. And just to be clear, the 10.5% is a delta of approximately 300 square foot difference. And to be clear, I still believe that there's a lot of use for a home that is within 300 square feet of the request, and the usability of that 300 square feet. That's just to add on to why the 12% seemed to be above and beyond the least relief necessary.
Thank you, Manny.
Okay.
All right, that is it.
So as I understand it, the vote carries 5.
Vote carries.
5 to, yeah. That's it. All right. We'll work with Joanna to get a decision document done and on the record. Thanks,
Okay, so
everyone.
you need, Michael, you want these, the standard worksheet
Yes.
returned to you, correct?
Yes, just like last time,
Oh,
please.
gotcha. Yep.
I make a motion to adjourn at 8:24.
Do we have a second? Oh,
You don't-
sorry. We don't need a second.
Don't
I'm
vote.
learning. Aye.
Donna, can we have a roll call?
Yes, Joe Carey,
Aye.
Zephyr Inkpen,
Aye.
Jim Finnegan,
Aye.
Donna Carchia, aye, Manny Linares.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Joanna, before you leave,
Thank you.
Joanna,
Yes.
couple of things that are off the record. The vote is done.